Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. Thanks for joining. Well, this one is all about true wisdom being the awareness of how ignorant we really are towards about everything, really, because it seems like as a teenager you know it all, and as you get older, you sort of go downhill from there as you realize how many things that you really don't know. And I can think of my dad who's now passed away. When I was growing up, we'd have, religious or political or philosophical conversations. And I always sort of felt like he was giving me a cop-out answer when he said, well, it's not really that simple, you know. But he didn't want to really waste his time trying to explain something to me that only a lifetime of experience can reveal to someone. So it took me, a long time to realize that. But now I'm beginning to see. And so, yeah, that's what really the whole channel is about, unbiased and on the fence. How can you not at least be a little bit on the fence when we can't say with any kind of certainty whether we're even really here or not, or whether you all aren't just projections of my imagination or anything like that. I don't think that, but I can't say for sure, you know. I could be dreaming right now, and I think there's many things that would lead one to believe in this sort of simulation or virtual reality that we find ourselves. And I just finished up a book by David Wilcock. Uh, you guys might recognize him from like Ancient Aliens and the Cosmic Disclosure with Corey Goode. And he's a great author. I really enjoy his books. But at the end, he had an acknowledgement for the Law of One material, how the Law of One confirmed a lot of his scientific findings. And I really appreciate his books because he gets into the metaphysical, but it's all backed up with science. So right down the alley of how I like to do things. I like to, prove what I can with what we have available to us, and not really be afraid to include fringe material in there. Um, if it helps paint a better picture of what's going on. But within that, he also mentioned that he didn't really trust a lot of the different channeling things out there. And but he mentioned one that he does, and that would be one that actually Everyday Masters channel Case told me about in a comment as well, and that is the Seth material, which was channeled by Jane Roberts way back in I think the 60s, 70s, and 80s or something like that. But so when I finished up that book, it got me thinking, well, let's see, check out some of the Seth material. And so I went on Google Play and looked up to see what books were available, and I found one called The Nature of Personal Reality. It was a Seth book, Specific Practical Techniques for Solving Everyday Problems and Enriching the Life You Know, by Jane Roberts, as I mentioned. So as I'm reading this, I'm like, wow, I've just got to at least share a little bit of this because I found it to be pretty cool just in the little bit I've read here so far. So I thought I'd share it with you all. I've got more material coming. I've got a music Mandela effect music video that's in the works, but you gotta have that balance between learning and sharing. And so when I came across this, I said, well, let me share this. So here's a little excerpt I wanted to read for you guys because I thought it was sort of profound in its implications. But the living picture of the world grows within the mind. The world as it appears to you is like a three-dimensional painting in which each individual takes a hand. Each color, each line that appears within it has first been painted within a mind, and only then does it materialize without. In this case, however, the artists themselves are a portion of the painting and appear within it. There is no effect in the exterior world that does not spring from an inner source. There is no motion that does not first occur within the mind. The great creativity of consciousness is your heritage. It does not belong to mankind alone. However, each living being possesses it, and the living world consists of a spontaneous cooperation that exists between the smallest and the highest, the greatest and the lowly, between the atoms and the molecules and the conscious, reasoning mind. All manner of insects, birds, and beasts cooperate in this venture, producing the natural environment. This is as normal and inevitable as the fact that your breath causes a mist to form on glass if you breathe upon it. All consciousness creates the world, rising out of feeling tone. It is a natural product of what your consciousness is. Feelings and emotions emerge into reality in certain specific ways. Thoughts appear, growing on the bed already laid. The seasons spring up, formed by ancient feeling tones, having deep and abiding rhythms. They are the result, again, of innate creative aspects that are a portion of all life. These ancient aspects lie now deeply buried in the psyches of all species, and from them the individual patterns, the specific blueprints for new differentiations emerge. The body of the earth can be said to have its own soul or mind, whichever term you prefer. Using this analogy, the mountains and oceans, the valleys and rivers, and all natural phenomena spring from the earth's soul, as all events and all manufactured objects appear from the inner mind or soul of mankind. The inner world of each man and woman is connected with the inner world of the earth. The spirit becomes flesh. Part of each individual's soul, then, is intimately connected with what we will call the world's soul, or the soul of the earth. The smallest blade of grass or flower is aware of this connection and without reasoning comprehends its position, its uniqueness, and its source of vitality. The atoms and molecules that compose all objects, whether it be the body of a person, a table, a stone, or a frog, know the great passive thrust of creativity that lies beneath their own existence, and upon which their individuality floats, distinct, clear, and unassailable. So does the human individual rise up in victorious distinctiveness from the ancient and yet ever new fountains of its own soul. The self arises from unknowing into knowing, constantly surprising itself. As you read these sentences, for example, some of your knowledge is conscious, knowing, and is instantly available. Some is unconscious, but even the unconscious knowing is knowing in its own unknowing. You always know what you are doing, even when you do not realize it. Your eye knows it sees, though it cannot see itself except through the use of reflection. In the same way, the world as you see it is a reflection of what you are, a reflection not in glass, but in three-dimensional reality. You project your thoughts, feelings, and expectations outward, then you perceive them as the outside reality. When it seems to you that others are observing you, you are observing yourself from the standpoint of your own projections. You are the living picture of yourself. You project what you think you are outward into flesh. Your feelings, your conscious, your unconscious thoughts all alter and form your physical image. This is fairly easy for you to understand. It is not as easy, however, to realize that your feelings and thoughts form your exterior experience in the same way, or that the events that appear to happen to you are initiated by you within your mental or psychic inner environment. Your body does not just happen to be thin or fat, tall or short, healthy or ill. These characteristics are mental and are thrust outward by you upon your image. I do not mean to be facetious, but you were not born yesterday. Your soul was not born yesterday. In those terms, but before the annals of time as you think of time. The characteristics that were yours at birth were yours for a reason. The inner self chose them. To a large extent, the inner self can even now alter many of them. You did not arrive at birth without a history. Your individuality was always latent within your soul, and the history that is a part of you is written within unconscious memory that resides not only within your psyche, but is faithfully decoded in your genes and chromosomes, and fulfilled in the blood that rushes through your veins. You are aware, alert, and participating in many more realities than you know as your soul expresses itself through you. That consciousness of your usual daylight hours, the ego consciousness, rises up like a flower from the ground of the underneath, the unconscious bed of your own reality. Though you are not aware of it, this ego itself emerges, then falls back again into the unconscious, from which another ego then arises as a new bloom from the springtime earth. You do not have the same ego now that you had 5 years ago, but you are not aware of the change. Ego rises out of what you are, in other words. It is a part of the action of your being and consciousness, but as the eye cannot see its own shifting colors and expressions, as it is not aware that it lives and dies constantly, as its atomic structure changes, so you are not aware that the ego continually changes, dies, and is reborn. Physically, the structure of a cell retains its identity even while the matter that composes it is continually altered. The cell rebuilds itself in line with its own pattern of identity, yet is always a part of emerging action, alive and responding even in the midst of its own multitudinous deaths. So, psychological structures form to which various names are given. The names are meaningless, but the structures behind them are not. Such psychological structures also retain their identity, their pattern of uniqueness, even while they change constantly, die, and are reborn. The I rises out of the physical structure. The ego rises out of the structure of the psyche. It cannot see itself as the I cannot. Both look outward, in one case away from the physical body, and in the other case away from the inner psyche to the environment. The creative body consciousness creates the I. The creative inner psyche creates the ego. The body forms the I in the splendid wisdom of its great unconscious knowing. The psyche brings forth the ego that perceives psychologically as the I perceives physically. Both the I and the ego are formations focused towards perception of exterior reality. And wow, that's how this book starts out. So I was reading that and I was like, oh my gosh, if this whole book is like this, wow. So I'm just getting started on it, but you can see that was the first chapter, and for me it was something else to read. I don't know if you guys felt like the same way I felt, but I was blown away. And it's hard to believe this has been out for decades, longer than the raw material I've been reading. So yeah, I've got more on the way. I do appreciate you all watching. I hope this was edifying to you in some way, because it was to me. And I've got to even think about it. It's one of those things that it causes you to really think. And so I'll be thinking about this all day long, I'm sure, and probably dive into some more of the reading a little bit later on, and share anything I find out with you guys. But I appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.